I'm Charlotte Cohen and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Wednesday the 10th of December. And today we're focusing on Celtic.
I was pleased with the mentality. We had really good moments, and we had moments obviously that yes, we need to improve.
There's a new manager in the Celtic hot seat. We'll take a look at what Wilfried Nancy's philosophy is, whether he's not got off to a flying start.
It is a header in! McEntee! What a wonderful header from Oisin McEntee! And the league leaders double their lead at the home of the champions!
What will the new manager change and how will the transfer window go? And we'll also look ahead to Thursday when Celtic are in Europa League action again.
Oh, it's in! Nygren scores it off the underside of the bar! Seismic goal for Celtic, who have just got into a 2-goal lead in the closing stages in Rotterdam.
We'll cover all the Parkhead bases right here.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Joining me this morning, Scott Allen, former Celtic midfielder. How are you this morning, Scott?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. And Paul John Dykes from a Celtic State of Mind podcast. How are you, Paul?
I'm very well, Charlotte. Pleased to meet you.
Good stuff. Before we look at Celtic this season, some sad news yesterday of the passing of Dixie Deans. Paul, what did you make of the news?
It's a devastating thing to hear whenever a Celtic great passes. You know, Dixie Deans was before my time, of course, but an absolute Celtic legend. You look at his goal-scoring record, incredible. We could be doing with that kind of talent in the Celtic side just now, but thoughts and prayers with everybody associated with Dixie Deans.
I know he's before your time, Scott, as well, but I suppose a significant figure in Celtic's history and a great goal scorer for the club as well during what was a very successful time for them.
Yeah, he really was. I actually met Dixie quite a few times. I think about 10 years ago he was working for a guy I know's company, and I used to bump into him quite a lot, and he was a great personality. But just to echo what we said there, what a goal scorer for Celtic he was.
I'm sure he had fond memories and some probably pretty good stories to tell as well.
Yeah, I think the players of years gone by have got better stories than the modern player. That's for sure.
Wilfried Nancy, let's look at him, because it took a while to get that deal over the line. There was obviously a lot of talk of it, so by the time it arrived, we all kind of knew that it was happening. Do you think that could have gone smoother, Paul?
I think so. Celtic have got a history of delaying deals, don't we? And I think that, you know, everybody had heard Nancy was the front runner. There was a few names mentioned. He was clearly identified as the best candidate from Paul Tisdale, and we waited that little bit longer. Martin O'Neill, I think, got a few extra games during his temporary stint. And he's in the door. You know, he arrives on the Thursday, gets a couple of training sessions, and then we go in for a massive game on Sunday. And, you know, he was bold, I think. He went right in with regards to his own shape, his own approach to the game. I'd be interested to hear from a pro footballer how that works. You know, only having that short period of time working with a squad, a manager implementing new ideas. Was it the right move? I mean, Scott will know better than me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Scott. I mean, have you ever had that experience of a new manager coming in and just trying to kind of flip everything around in a few days?
Yeah, but I had at Hibs when Paul Heckingbottom left, and then we weren't scoring goals, and Eddie May came in the interim and went straight to a 3-5-2, gave us two up front just to be more attacking. We ended up winning the game, I think 4-1 at the weekend when we hadn't been scoring goals. So, listen, I'm on the camp where I just feel it was just common sense to give Martin O'Neill this week. I just felt if you had to delay another week for Wilfried Nancy, then do it and allow your manager to settle in. For everybody connected with Celtic, the best option was to let Martin O'Neill play out this week and the League Cup final. That was my opinion. At the same time, I think it was very bold that Wilfried Nancy coming in and going, right, we're going straight to this and trying to implement it. At the same, and on top of that, Celtic for me should have been 2-0 up in the first 15 minutes. That is first 15-20 minutes, great intensity about them. Counter press was back. And I understand that new manager comes in, you want to impress him, that's there, but they really limited Hearts to did not much. Anytime Hearts were clearing it, they were getting caught. It was getting up to Shankland. Shankland was getting pressured, losing the ball. Celtic were playing from there. It was just that final moment. It's just where Celtic have probably been this season. Just in the with that last pass or that last finish, they just couldn't quite take their chances. And people will go, well, the last couple of weeks, Hatate's been finding their passes, Engels has, but I just felt they were that intense when they were then landing on the ball. They were rushing things. That's what it looked like to me. But if you look at the game as a whole, Celtic controlled the game. They broke the lines with many passes, some really good things in amongst it. Ultimately, for Celtic fans, it is all about winning. I understand that, but I think there was a lot to be excited about if you're a Celtic fan. And in the same time, you have to defend better in the isolated moments. It's as simple as that. In the isolated moments that Hearts did have, Celtic just didn't defend well enough. But at the same time, you should be 2-0 up 15 minutes and then you'd have really felt the excitement in the stadium, and the players would have full control of the game. When you fail to take the chances, you allow Hearts to then find a way back into the game. And that wasn't through possession, that was just determination. When Hearts then got that goal before half time, the runs that Hearts are making off the ball then become easier because they've got something to protect. And then you lose a second goal to the set piece. But I wasn't on the camp. Some of the stuff I've seen since the game Sunday is just, for me, it's just a massive overreaction. The guys came in. See, even down to the tactics board thing, that is immaterial to anything. The guy's in the door 2 days. He's shown his captain structurally where he thinks he can do it. At the same time, he doesn't speak perfect English. He doesn't know everybody perfectly yet. So he's trying to show somebody via tool, your captain, who's a very intelligent football player, and Cal is sort of like a coach on the pitch. That is how he is as a guy. Something to maybe get them back in the game. It wasn't to be, but the reaction to things like that I think we should be better than that.
Yeah, just actually on the tactics. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Paul, about the tactics board thing in particular. I mean, I certainly saw a lot of people on social media not very, very mixed opinions. Some people, like Scott, are saying everybody's overreacting to this. The other half of people saying, this is silly. What a bad look. What was your take on it?
I think the reaction really has been over the top. You look at the conditions. That's the first thing I would say. You've got a notebook, an iPad, or a plastic board. The best thing to use in the conditions would be a plastic board in that environment. You've got the visual element, like Scott says. Let's get the message across really quickly, regardless of any barriers. There it is on a board. It's as simple as that. He's talking about changing the shape. He changed the shape twice in that period. And after the second tactical switch, we create 5 chances. We almost score a header through Engels. He scores that header a few weeks ago against Hibs. It's tiny margins. And if we pull the 2-goal deficit back, he's a genius. The tactical board's a genius. I do think it's been really over the top. And when we're looking at the Scottish game, we're trying to talk the game up. We've heard recently people comparing Celtic and Rangers to Stockport County. Let's talk our game up here. People are having a go at Nancy before he's even in the door. And then once he's arrived, they're focusing on the board. They're focusing on his trainers. Somebody yesterday was focusing on his trainers. No, I think, the actual tactical changes, if you look at them, they worked. They were the right changes to make. He gets his message across. And we'll get used to that as well, particularly when the results go our way.
Just on the trainer thing, I did clock when I was watching the game that he was wearing green trainers, which I thought I didn't know how much of a conscious choice that was, but it's interesting that you bring that up because I thought when I was watching it, I was like, oh, he's wearing green trainers. I don't know if he maybe wore yellow at Columbus, but there you go.
You know this, I remember speaking to another Celtic legend, Brian McClare, and he says whenever he's in Glasgow, he knows who's safe to talk to by the colour of the trainers. So obviously Nancy was just trying to, get himself involved in the Celtic culture.
Yeah, you can't blame him for doing that, I suppose. Scott, how important is it for...
There's probably about 20,000 fans with the same trainers on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Well, obviously we saw him start to implement this 3 at the back. How do you see his style... I'll go to you, Scott, first. His style working out in Scotland?
Well, it was total domination. If you look at control of a football game, and areas of the park where you want to get to, but they broke the line with a lot of passes, and they had players in the area of the park where you want them to be. And then it comes down to that final action, final bit of quality, which is what we've all been speaking about, and why I suppose we'll get to January and we'll talk about quality of player. The manager can't, in the last moments, be the decision maker for you. That then comes down to moments of individual ability. And there's no doubt Celtic need to strengthen in the areas. You had 3 left-sided centre-backs playing the back 3. So naturally, you don't have the same passing lanes coming from the right-hand side. That was quite evident within the game. But my head has got to score. That it's genuinely as simple as that. Positions need strengthened, and that extra bit of finesse in the final third will be the difference. The style, as you said, for me, possession, and I know possession doesn't win you games, but it lets you control games and control outcomes of how you want to play. And you would much rather, me personally, for how I see football, I'd much rather be than that than defending for 90 minutes for week in, week out, because ultimately over the course of a season, I don't think that leads to success in isolation with this sort of performance. So I think there was lots to like about it. I understand frustration from certain fans, and I understand people wondering should they have just left it as it is. But at the same time, you got players in the same positions they'd been over the last few weeks. They just, in the moments that we're talking about, we just weren't able to show the bit of quality. And at the same time, you got to credit Hearts for the doggedness that they had, and when they get given the opportunity, they took their chances. But football's about both boxes. In the isolated moments, Celtic just didn't defend well enough. They had 2 occasions that they conceded the goal, but they were in areas of the park where they would want to be. And for me, I just think that comes down to individual player quality. I think I've seen Paul on the TV speak about it a lot. Recruitment, it's been a huge talking point over the last couple of months. They are lacking with that real bit of finesse that we've seen, especially from Celtic wingers over previous seasons. And then you put Maeda up front. He's not naturally a striker, and you do. I think that is quite what Maeda's like for me. I think one day he can be really aggressive in the final third and put his goals away, and then the next week you just don't get that same quality. You'll always get the work rate for him. At the same time, first 20 minutes, Paul, I don't know what you thought, he was stretching the game in behind. We're getting runs. After about 25-30 minutes, they stopped exploiting the space they were starting to create, and that allowed Hearts. It made it a bit easier for Hearts. So January's huge for Celtic. There's no getting away from that. But bits of the performances. I don't know what you thought, Paul. That for me, well, I think there would be quite a lot to be excited about.
There definitely is. You look at Dyson, in the first 10 minutes he could score 2 goals at the weekend. He's carrying a really bad injury, he's wearing a headband because of the eye injury, and there's been moments, I think, he's unsettled, he has been unsettled, and there's been moments even going back to the Scottish Cup final, Scott, where, he's had big chances against Kairat as well. But he is basically the man. There's nobody really supporting him up top. We don't have the backup, and it's almost as if get to January and then we can start to strengthen up top. You look at the offensive players that we brought in this season. We did sign 3 players in Yamada, Balakwisha and Tuneke, and you look at combined, that cost us almost £13 million. We've had 2 goals and 2 assists from all 3 players combined, which is simply not good enough. And that is where you look at a game at the weekend there, you need that cutting edge, and we've not really had it. Maybe it should have come off the bench. So hopefully in January we can put a lot of these wrongs right, and we might have to change our ideas because of the difference in style that Nancy's bringing to the side as well.
Yeah, we'll come on to talk about transfers actually just in a second, but a wee reminder that this week's episode of Sacked in the Morning is available on BBC Sounds now, where Craig and Amy chat to former Partick Thistle, Ayr United and Dundee United boss Ian McCall. Well, obviously we're kind of fast approaching the January window, but Paul, what kind of business do you see Celtic doing? Do you think there'll be a lot of pre-contracts looking ahead to kind of the summer and next season? Do you think they'll be forced into panic buys? How do you see this one played out?
I think a lot of the transfers over the last couple of seasons have been what Brendan Rodgers used to call club signings or players for the future. In January, we definitely need starters. We need players to come right into the starting 11. We're now starting to play a back 3. And as Scott says, all 3 players were left-sided. It's not ideal. We probably will be in the market for a right-sided centre-back. The forward area is the biggest concern. We've just not been getting the same kind of output offensively from the forward players. Johnny Kenny's done well when he's been in. We've also got Iheanacho coming back, but we do need that striker position sorted. Maeda might leave, and that's another issue as well. We need to be strengthening and also replacing any of the players that go out. So it's a huge January transfer. The best one I can remember was in Ange Postecoglou's first season. We bring in 4 players, 3 of them were effective. We actually need to do better than that in this January transfer. And if anybody else comes in, a project player, etc., that's fine for next season. But we need a number of players to come straight in and go right into the team.
Scott, who do you think Celtic are going to want to move on in this one? I mean, Paul mentioned Maeda potentially leaving, but are there any players you think they kind of need to give a push out the door?
Well, the one that comes to mind would be Paulo Bernardo. I think a player, and I like Paulo Bernardo as a player, but under 21 captain of Portugal last season, he has got quality, but he just hasn't had the minutes. He would be one way you would expect they could pull in a transfer fee for, because he does have quality. So, and I wouldn't imagine a player of that calibre would want to just sit and be a bit part player. That would be my honest opinion. At the same time, if Maeda was to go, and I do feel you can kind of see in his performance that his mind probably is set on leaving. But at the same time, Celtic just can't afford to let someone like go unless you bring in the quality and replace those sort of numbers that he's given Celtic over the last few years. So it's not going to be how big a transfer window this is for Celtic. At the same time, recruitment for Celtic at this time, it isn't easy. It can't be easy to go and source these players. The transfer structure that Celtic stick to, fans' expectation of what sort of market they should be buying in is always a big talking point, because Celtic can't go and buy the players who your Man City's not. You're trying to find these players at a decent value, at a level where they're not the finished article, but at the same time they can come in and handle the environment and the pressures of playing for a team at Celtic, which I think, as much as we talk about signings having that is a difficult thing to do. It's very hard to find the guys who come in and really hit the ground running. Fortunately for Celtic, they've done more of their ones in recent times than a lot of teams throughout Europe. But to do that time and time again does prove difficult, and that's what we're seeing this season. I think Paul John speaks about close to 13 million spent. For the numbers that are given back, for the amount of time Celtic have the ball and control the game, the numbers, they just aren't good enough for what you would expect. I think Jeanette Kane-Yang, who you see at the weekend, and in moments to do some really good things, but the numbers have just got to be better. You're now looking at a certain player to come in and fit a shape which Wilfried Nancy likes to play in that right or left side for Celtic, which is usually, can you keep your wide players high and wide and be very, very strong in the 1v1. You're now asking them to do the work going back the way as well, and find players that super fit and relentless, which you would expect it to be under Wilfried Nancy and how he wants to play, could prove difficult in the markets that Celtic are in to sign players.
And I suppose we've seen the fans' unrest of late, particularly given the summer windows you guys have just been talking about. But Paul, how bad is the relationship between the fans and the board just now?
It's as bad as I can remember it, to be honest, Charlotte. And I remember the early 90s when, it was the sack the board days and boycotts. The breakdown in the relationship between the board and a great number of fans has been incredible this season. Obviously, winning masks a lot of that. You start winning games, you can win a cup in just a few days' time. That does mask a lot of it. But I think that the club need to make big efforts to try and come together with the fan base. We used to talk about the holy trinity of the players, the management and the fans. And when you come together, you're a much stronger force. At the moment, that's fragmented. We do need to bring that back together. It just feels as though, we're not part of we'll never ever be part of the decision-making process. But share your vision with us. Let us know what your your ideas are going to be moving forward. We never know from one transfer window to the next. We should be in a position where we're strengthening rather than bringing in players that are actually going to save our season. And we've found ourselves in that position. That's after a number of bad transfer windows. There's a knock-on effect. And we're in that market. We're in a market where we're trying to bring in £5 million plus players, and they're not being effective. So that needs to come down to scouting, player identification. And a lot of us look at Paul Tisdale. He has got a massive part to play in this. He's never been spoken to by the fans. There's nothing to find online to see what his vision is. Yet he's running the show in January. So I think the relationship has to improve. But the club need to make an effort. We need to come together. There has to be a compromise between the board and the fan base.
Paul Tays went really under the radar, and all of this for me is quite surprising. Like I touched on a minute ago, I do understand how difficult a job it can be recruiting for a team at Celtic when the expectations are getting higher every year based on previous performance, which I understand. So I can understand it's a difficult job trying to find the players to come in and be that level and really hit the ground running at Celtic. In terms of the disconnect, I think there's no going away how disconnected it is, and when Celtic are together, as Paul John says, the performances on the pitch are better. I think at the same time, when you look at the board over the last 20 years, they have done a good job. If you ask it, overall, it's the Celtic board done a good job and put Celtic in a good position up until the summer transfer window. They would say the board overall have done a good job. When you look at the way some other clubs are ran throughout Europe, Celtic are in a good position. They can go and strengthen. It's just, will they spend the money now to do that? At the same time, money doesn't guarantee you that quality of player. And then you look at decisions they've made. Probably the best decision they made this year was actually getting Martin O'Neill in. That's probably the best decision this board's made this year, was choosing Martin O'Neill, which was really came out of the blue, I think, to all of us at the time. That's the best decision they'd made for the club this year. For me, I felt, give it another week. Let them see out the Hearts Roma in the League Cup final. I think Martin O'Neill had earned that. And ultimately you put Wilfried Nancy under a bit of pressure already, just purely on the timing. Don't know what you think about that, Paul, but
without a doubt, I mean, Martin O'Neill lifted everything when he comes in. You were talking there about the disconnect between the fans and the club. You know, you instantly felt as though there was an identity again, because we all know Martin O'Neill. And then he starts bringing in the results. Not great performances all the time. A lot of it was back to basics, and we bring in the results. He got us back into the league title race, you know, right back up to top position other than goal difference, gets us into the cup final. Breathes a wee bit more belief into the Europa League campaign, which is going to be difficult anyway. And like you say, I think he himself had spoken about leading the team out in a League Cup final. The only thing I can look at now, I do look back on the history, and people have been mentioning, you know, similarities between other managers coming in and having a hard time. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but what I will say is that Wim Jansen and Ange Postecoglou won a League Cup, and it galvanised everything. And it led to us winning the double. I think you cannot underestimate the importance of that game against St Mirren. If Celtic win that, everything can look completely different. But the club need to capitalise on it, see it as an opportunity with a feel-good factor, and hold out an olive branch to the fans and say, let's talk and let's sort this out.
Well, before that massive cup final, they've got a massive game on Thursday against Roma, fourth in Serie A, serious quality in their side, beat Rangers comfortably. Scott, can you see where Celtic could hurt Roma on Thursday?
Celtic will have the ball at times on Thursday. I don't see Roma coming and completely dictating the game. I think Celtic have got enough quality within their midfield to kind of take some of that control away from Roma. It's what you do in the moments. And that would be the only worry, was how many times Celtic got into areas where they couldn't hurt Hearts at the weekend. They now, on Thursday, when they do get the moments, they have to take the moments. And at the same time, in the isolated moments where you have to defend, they've got to defend better. Set piece set up, got to be better. So I don't look at it as if Roma are going to come and completely dominate Celtic. I wouldn't expect that. Celtic will get chances. It's whether you can find the moments of quality within the game and take your chances when they come your way. Celtic will create chances, not getting away from that. It's whether they can defend well at the same time. So I wouldn't be looking at it as if Roma are world beaters. I think they've got quality within their team. But so does Celtic, and it's whether you take that quality when it comes your way.
They've also lost their last 2 league games, I think, Roma. Do you think, Paul, that's cause for a little bit of optimism from Celtic?
There is a little bit of that. You look at the form. We focus on the game they played against Rangers. I also think about the Midtjylland game because they are the best team we've played this season. And obviously Roma were able to overcome them as well. It'll be tough, absolutely, no doubt about it. But I think it would have been tough even with Martin O'Neill in the dugout. It would have been tough if Brendan Rodgers was in the dugout. It's not a free hit by any means, absolutely not. It's a European night at Celtic Park. These are special occasions for Celtic. I think it's another introduction, if you like, to Nancy of what being a Celtic manager is all about on Thursday night. And I think he needs to make the decision about what's going to be the shape and what's going to be the starting lineup on Sunday. Play it on Thursday night. And I think that we do have players that can hurt them, regardless of their quality. We do have players. And again, have they done their homework on a manager who's just in the door? And is there going to be that element of surprise to Roma because Nancy is trying something completely different?
And it's not the easiest start for the new manager, is it? He had Hearts, he's got Roma, then as you mentioned, the League Cup final. What do you think's an acceptable return from those 3 games in terms of results and performance, Paul?
Well, obviously, I wanted to win all 3 of them. That's unrealistic. But I would definitely take the Cup final. The Cup final is the most important one right now in a microcosm because when we go into every season, we talk about European aspirations. I'm not willing to write off Europe. Of course I'm not. But we find ourselves in a situation and you think to yourself, what is the best outcome here? It's definitely getting the silver. We are hoping that galvanises Nancy with his new team. But you don't want to lose your momentum on Thursday night by going into a game and being absolutely battered. You want to prepare for the game on Sunday. And I think if you come through and you've won a cup, we still have a game in hand in the league. We can claw that back. There's plenty of opportunity coming up in the Europa League to claw that back. But on Sunday, it's winner takes all. So as long as we win that, I think there's something to build on.
Scott, what do you think? What's an acceptable run of results in these next 2 massive games?
I think look at Thursday first. I think as long as there's a performance there, I think that would be something to build on. If there's a performance there, Celtic fans can get behind it. And then ultimately Sunday, and what Wilfried Nancy will find out is it really is all about winning, especially when there's trophies to be won. So Celtic have to win that game on Sunday for me. I think that's exactly what Wilfried Nancy and the Celtic team will need. It's exactly what the Celtic fans will demand, and that's when you'll understand the importance of winning games of football at a club with week in, week out pressure, which is not getting away from it. You cannot compare the environment at MLS to managing Celtic in Glasgow and how much pressure's on you game to game. There's no getting away from that, and that's when you'll see. And at the same time, if they are to come through the cup game on Sunday and they're successful and they win the game, you'll understand how good it feels to be part of a club who likes winning, and that's what it's all about. Then he'll really feel what it means to manage a club like Celtic. So it's a huge game. They have to win on Sunday. Thursday for me, if they can get a performance and a result to go with it, then fantastic. But performance, I think that would be the main thing.
Well, that's all we've got time for. Many thanks to Paul, John and Scott, and thank you very much for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.